Do you want a stronger core?
I mean, who doesn't, right?
That's probably true. Everyone wants a strong core. A strong core is essential for good posture and ease of movement. Things like bending, twisting, and carrying heavy objects become easier as our core strength increases.
What about back pain? A strong core can help us avoid lower back pain, right?
Absolutely. A strong core is going to support our spine to help reduce the risk of back pain and injury.
Well, I'm excited for today's episode because we're talking about the 5 mistakes people make when attempting to build core strength. Welcome to the Aligned and Active podcast, the place to be if you want to understand your body better and live a healthier, more active lifestyle. I'm your host, Benjamin, and I'm here with Hannah, who's founder of Aligned and Active. She's a soft tissue therapist and movement coach. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you, Benjamin. So as you know, I am passionate about helping people to avoid the pitfalls of sedentary lifestyles. And that's why this is a podcast and not a video that you have to stay glued to the screen to watch. So if you're sat down right now, I want to encourage you to carry on listening to this episode while you go out for a walk, cook dinner, do the housework.
That's right. We will keep you company while you do these everyday tasks that have to get done. It's time to multitask. Move and discover more about core strength at the same time. So let's dive straight in. What do you think is the first mistake people make when attempting to build core strength?
The first mistake people make is doing a core workout that only focuses on abs, and actually only one abdominal muscle in particular. So, Benjamin, if you were going to do a core workout, what exercises would you choose?
Crunches and sit-ups would be the first thing that comes to mind.
Exactly. So the main muscle that sit-ups and crunches target is the rectus abdominis. But what if I told you there are at least 6 muscles or muscle groups that make up what we call the core?
Oh, that's a lot more. So which muscles make up the core?
So as well as the rectus abdominis, there are the internal and external obliques, the transverse abdominis. So those are the abdominal muscles. But it's not just the abs that are important in core stability. The muscles in the back are equally important, in particular the erectus spinae group. And I would argue that latissimus dorsi is an important core muscle too. And then we need to consider the diaphragm.
The diaphragm? But that's a breathing muscle.
Yes, indeed it is. The diaphragm plays an important role in breathing, but it also forms the top of the abdominal cavity, while the pelvic floor muscles form the bottom of the cavity. So the core is not just about strength and movement, it's also about intra-abdominal pressure. So the core is not just abs, it's also the diaphragm, the pelvic floor, the back muscles.
What about the glutes?
Yes, you could argue that the glutes also play a role. In fact, you could argue that the psoas, the quadratus lumborum, even the lateral hip muscles also play a stabilizing role, so could be included in the core. Although, for the purpose of exercise instruction, I tend to focus on the main muscles on the front and back of the torso and work on the hip muscles separately. Otherwise, workouts can become a bit overwhelming.
That's for sure. So the main takeaway is that the core is made up of lots of muscles, so we need to make sure we are working all of the groups.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you recommend?
I think that the plank is a really good exercise, as long as you've got the initial strength required to maintain the correct alignment. And you can do the plank in press-up position, and then you can do it on the side using one arm, and then also on the back for pushing the hips up to the ceiling. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. And if you're looking just for one simple exercise that can work just about everything, then the plank is it.
And if you're not strong enough to do a plank yet?
Well, there are lots of smaller movements that incorporate breathing to work the transverse abdominis, pelvic floor, and diaphragm. So I would recommend joining the Aligned and Active membership program, where I teach the exercises in detail and help you with a daily and weekly exercise program where each month is focused on improving a different area of the body.
Okay, so mistake number 1 is only focusing on the abs and forgetting the back and other muscles that make up the core. What is mistake number 2?
Mistake number 2 is not understanding alignment. It's so easy to go down the gym or get your exercise mat out at home and whack out a few core strengthening moves without understanding the correct form. And unfortunately, you're unlikely to see the outcomes that you want if your alignment is incorrect. So you need to understand alignment, and you also need to understand movement quality so that you're working the muscles in the correct way.
So this is why instruction is important.
Absolutely. So it's not just about knowing which exercises to do, it's about understanding the detail of those exercises. It's also good to have a coach who can watch you and point out corrections, because it's not always easy to know where your alignment or quality of movement is not quite right unless someone points it out to you.
So what alignment pointers should people keep in mind when doing core exercises?
So the main thing to consider is the connection between the rib cage and the pelvis. So many of the muscles which make up the core, which we talked about earlier, they attach to both the rib cage and the pelvis. And so for those muscles to function optimally, we need a neutral pelvis and a relaxed rib cage. So if the ribs are thrust up or flaring and the pelvis is tilted, then the muscles can't work as strongly. Now, here is some important information. I actually start coaching core strength by working on being able to move the legs independently from the pelvis and the arms independently from the rib cage, because hip and shoulder mobility plays an important role in core strength, and actually a lot of people miss that.
Now that is interesting. So building core strength is a lot more nuanced than just doing sit-ups or even planks.
Yes, so we need to look at the body more as a whole, even when we're focusing on individual parts.
Fascinating. Okay, what is mistake number 3?
So the next mistake people make when training for a core strength is working beyond their ability. Now, there are 2 ways in which this can happen. The first is by attempting an exercise or a move that they're just not ready for yet. And the other is by continuing repetitions beyond the point of fatigue so that you're no longer able to hold that form. In either of those instances, what will happen is that the person will have poor form. So, for example, in a plank, the person will not be able to maintain the alignment and the back will start to bend as the tummy pulls down towards the floor. The other thing I see a lot, especially with sit-ups, or even moves where you're holding the legs up in the air, is that the abdominal muscles dome.
And that is not a good thing?
No, you want to avoid that. So the aim with abdominal exercises is to think about the muscles lengthening and lifting rather than bulging. So if you're doing a move and your tummy muscles are coming out in front, often in a dome or cone shape, then the move is actually too hard for you. Either too hard at all, or you've just reached the point of fatigue and need to stop. And this is important for everyone, but this is especially important if you have diastasis recti or a hiatus hernia. It's especially important to work with your current ability and to make sure that you're working effectively.
So perhaps we could sum it up by saying work on quality rather than quantity.
Yes, I like that. And don't do something too difficult for you. You can work up to that when you're ready.
All right, mistake number 4.
Right, this one's going to surprise you. Mistake number 4 is about working too hard.
Wait, what? You can work too hard on strength training?
It's about balancing work with relaxation. So if we're only ever tensing and contracting a muscle, it will get very tight, which people equate with strength, but there reaches a point where a very tight muscle is actually weak.
That's interesting.
So, for example, we mentioned earlier about diastasis recti. So that's a condition where the 2 sides of the rectus abdominal muscles separate and leave a gap down the middle. And it's caused by high intra-abdominal pressure. And so pregnancy is a common cause, but men can get the condition too, as well as women who haven't had a baby. So it's not exclusively a childbirth issue. So people with diastasis recti need to work on building abdominal strength, but you'll probably find that their muscles are very tight, especially the rectus abdominis. And as my work as a sports massage therapist, I would use massage to reduce the tension in the rectus abdominis alongside giving core strengthening exercises. So massage can be effective for people who have overactive abdominal muscles that are causing weakness. But in terms of general training, people just need to practice letting go. So I like to finish my core strength classes with an abdominal release exercise where we focus on relaxing those abdominal muscles.
I can imagine that's important if you do things like Pilates, where you're spending a lot of focused time holding the abs.
Yes. And ballet is another one that comes to mind. So I suppose relaxing is actually like a form of cross training. As well as working the abs, you've got to get good at letting them rest too.
That's great advice. I've learned so much about the core already. Have you got one more common mistake that people make when trying to build core strength?
Yes. And you will love this one. The last mistake people make is just relying on workouts to build strength.
What do you mean by that?
So exercise sessions are great, but even if we're super committed, we're probably only going to be working out for an hour or so each day, hopefully with one day for rest. So what are we doing with the remaining 15 or so hours that we're awake? So my final piece of advice is to make one small adjustment to your alignment so that you're building core strength throughout the day, even when you're stirring your dinner on the hob or sitting at your desk.
What? You can strengthen your core while you're sitting still?
Yes,
This is life-changing.
yes, it is. I mean, exercise is important, but movement is much more important. By sitting and standing with good alignment, we can be building a strong core even at rest.
Right, you have to let me in on the secret. How am I supposed to stand so I can get strong?
It's all about weight placement. So imagine you want to line yourself up with a plumb line, and you could even draw a vertical line with a white clean pen on your mirror and practice lining yourself up in line with that mirror. So you want to aim to line up the shoulders, the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So it's about getting the weight back over the heels rather than pushing forward into the midfoot, which a lot of people tend to do. So pelvis over heels. And then you want to check that your pelvis is in neutral and your rib cage is relaxed.
And what about sitting down?
Right, well, the same principles apply. So you want to have a neutral pelvis and neutral rib cage when you're sitting down. And then sit actively so that your muscles are having to hold you up rather than leaning against the back of the chair. When you're sitting down, you want to make sure that you're not sitting on your sit bones. So you can rock the pelvis forward slightly so that you're sitting more on the top of the legs. And then when you're standing, a test for weight placement is to see if you can wiggle your toes.
Well, that is very cool. So for our listeners at home who want to build core strength effectively, how would you sum up?
First, understand that the core is more than just abs. Find exercises that work on the torso as a whole, including back extension, spinal twisting, spinal flexion, and even hip and shoulder mobility. Not forgetting the role that the pelvic floor and diaphragm play in core stability. Focus on pelvic and rib cage alignment. Choose exercises that you can do while avoiding doming of the abdominal muscles. And remember to relax. Rest and relaxation is as important as working the muscles. Finally, make small changes to the way you sit and stand so that you can be building a strong core throughout the day, not just in your workout sessions.
This is fantastic advice and really eye-opening. I didn't know that tight muscles can actually be weak muscles. To all our listeners, what did you learn from this podcast? And what did you find interesting? And would you like to add anything to our list of mistakes people make when building core strength? We would love to hear from you. If you're listening on a platform that allows comments, then leave us a comment below.
Or you can send me an email at info@alignedandactive.com.
Well, Hannah, it has been great chatting with you today.
And you, Benjamin, and thank you to our listeners.
Yes, staying until the end is impressive. It's been fun hanging out with you.
And I hope you've been inspired to get more aligned and active. Until next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.